The next submission is an oral presentation from Ms. McNeil, as outlined in CMD 15H 5.9 and 5.9A.
I always wind up going off script a little, and I guess I'm going to start right from the top going off script. I mean, I have this all written, and I carefully timed it 5 minutes. Just off the top, if a person was at their first CNSC hearing, something they would notice is that it takes an awful lot of managers and complex management to manage this supposedly non-problematic substance. That's something you would notice right away. Okay, back to the script. Good afternoon, CNSC commissioners and staff, SRB personnel, members of the public, and all those watching via webcast. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you at this public hearing. As you know, this is not the first time I've spoken at a CNSC hearing. In fact, I've done so several times now. In Ottawa, in Curtis, in Port Hope, in Toronto. My first presentation to you, in fact, was the SRB hearing 5 years ago, May 2010 in Ottawa. Many people believe Albert Einstein defined insanity as doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Sometimes I wonder about myself, appearing at hearings over and over, apparently expecting different results, yet never seeing them. As it happens, it actually wasn't Einstein who coined the phrase. You can look that up. But he did say that using nuclear energy is one hell of a way to boil water. This is not a non sequitur, since it is in the nuclear reactors in southern Ontario that Pembroke's problematic tritium originates, a fact I believe not everyone in Pembroke is aware of. Full disclosure, and no surprise to you, commissioners, I'm an anti-nuclear activist, though becoming one took me by surprise and was definitely not part of any plan on my part. It just kind of happened. I've been anti-nuclear ever since, as a young university student, I read this book, Hiroshima, by John Hershey. It was the tritium situation here in Pembroke, however, that finally propelled me beyond being quietly anti-nuclear into anti-nuclear activism. I spent more than 6 years living up in Renfrew County, in Deep River mostly, and then some time in Pembroke. I loved and still love it up here and feel a strong loyalty and connection to this area and to the people here. Being aware that many people are intimidated at the idea of speaking to a CNSC tribunal and seemingly able to get past my own reluctance and fears about doing so, I feel more or less obliged to take part, as I know I'm not just speaking for myself, but also for others who find they simply can't do this. So it may be insanity, but here I am. As I pointed out to you previously, I do not have a technical, scientific, or mathematical mind. I am, on the other hand, very well attuned to language, everything associated with language. I've learned how to dig and decipher my way through the language used by the nuclear industry. Many of us call it nuke speak. Over the past several years, I've read a lot of books that have informed me about the way the nuclear industry operates. I have a pile of them here. There are some really well-told personal stories by people who grew up in nuclear towns. This one, Full Body Burden, Growing Up in the Nuclear Shadow of Rocky Flats, is the story of Kristen Iverson's experiences growing up in Rocky Flats, Colorado, where nuclear weapons were being made in such incredible secrecy, most people in the community had no idea what was going on, and where there were plutonium, fires, spills, and also tritium inexplicably present and never satisfactorily explained, as well as a lot of cancer. Welcome to Shirley, a memoir from an atomic town, tells of Kelly McMaster's growing up years in another nuclear town, Shirley, Long Island, where the Brookhaven National Laboratory was leaking massive amounts of tritium into the groundwater. People were getting sick with cancer, and children were developing and dying from an exceedingly rare brain cancer at frightening rates. I also recommend This Is My Homeland, Stories of the Effects of Nuclear Industries by people of the Serpent River First Nation and the North Shore of Lake Huron, for a snapshot of the earlier piece of the nuclear fuel chain, uranium mining, the Elliott Lake story. Pat McNamara's book, Port Hope, Canada's Nuclear Wasteland, is another, a book I know I mentioned to you at the Port Hope hearing. A story so mind-blowing I still marvel at what I learned about Canada's role in the world's weapons trade and the cooperation of our governments at all levels, municipal, provincial, and federal, ever since the 1940s. It shattered many illusions I'd held, and to tell you the truth, pretty much broke my heart. And I'm not making that up. Of course, we all live downstream from nuclear operations, even those who profit so hugely. But Pembroke, with its elephant in the room, is disproportionately affected. Tritium and the SRB story, not well enough understood by enough people. Sometimes I wonder if it's the GTE instead of the GTA, the Grand Tritium Experiment. Health impacts. As part of my supplementary submission, I sent in a document that explains the 1959 deal between the World Health Organization, WHO, and the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, in 1959. I already said that. IAEA is the global body that exists paradoxically to both regulate and promote nuclear energy. This 50-plus-year-old document lays out that WHO would need to get IAEA's agreement on any research it wanted to do. Why would the Nuclear Promotion Agency choose to support research demonstrating the health impacts of nuclear operations? But never mind, even without the participation of WHO, there is plenty of scientific research available, proving that exposure to radioactivity harms people, damages DNA, and sends its poisoned arrows into generations to come. Another of the presentations here today is focused on health. We just had it, so there's no need for me to say any more about tritium and health impacts here in Pembroke. Regarding CNSC's science, I think it's important for the people of Pembroke to understand that the CNSC is not as scientific as it lays claim to being. While the language of the nuclear industry can at first appear too technical for the average person to understand, one learns pretty quickly that the CNSC staff's language is actually often surprisingly full of unscientific claims and conclusions. Remember, I've been involved in a lot of CNSC hearings by now. I've heard the CNSC's Dr. Patsy Thompson say, in an apparent attempt to dismiss the industry's responsibility for exposing hundreds of workers at the Bruce plant to alpha radiation during refurbishment activities in 2009, quote, Spruce Power has a healthy safety culture for the following reasons. The alpha event was unforeseen for reasons that I don't have right now. There was no evidence that there was a potential for this event, so it's not something that Bruce Power or its employees decided to ignore, end quotes. Her line of reasoning appears to be, since we did not think it would happen and did not predict it or find it probable, we cannot therefore be held responsible if it does. In response to a question from the CNSC Tribunal at the 2014 Pickering Hold Point hearing regarding the potential risk of a catastrophic accident at the Pickering Nuclear Generating Station, CNSC staffer Dr. Rezenkowski said, we can, quotes, we can say the risk is zero because there was never a significant accident in the CANDU fleet. Really? This is a science-based prediction? Okay, I'm going off script again here. Spills in nuclear industry terms, when you get used to this stuff, spills are always said to be small, doses are always very low, releases are always below regulatory limits, and then there are DRLs. I haven't time to speak about the very unscientific concept of derived release limits, but I did address it in my supplementary submission. DRLs are used to convey a false reassurance that emissions are not a problem. SRB's request for a 10-year license. I find SRB's request to be unsupportable. This company has on innumerable occasions proven itself untrustworthy, unreliable, dishonest, and has been guilty for 25 years of blanketing the citizens of Pembroke with tritium via air, groundwater, and releases to the public sewer system. It isn't safe for people here to eat the produce grown here because of SRB's operations. So, given that, can anyone in this room really believe the company ought to be given a 10-year license? A 10-year license would vastly reduce the already insufficient scrutiny of the company's activities. We saw what happened with SSI in Peterborough. 18 years of false data, and yet the endorsement of CNSC staff for a 10-year license. There is a similar pattern here with SRB, with 15 years of underreported emissions. Happily, SSI has been shut down because of public pressure, I might add. Good news for Peterborough, bad news for the Pembroke environment, with SRB having taken up SSI's slack. SRB has always needed a shorter, tighter leash, not a longer, looser one. To conclude, I ask you to deny this license request. I ask you to really listen to, digest, and then act on the evidence presented here today, as well as that received by written submission, by organization and individuals who have nothing to gain financially from SRB's continued operations. But I don't really anticipate you're shutting down SRB. The CNSC is a license granting body. I've never known you to not grant the license the proponent was asking for. I'm aware that there's more to this tritium and nuclear waste business than meets the eye. I believe there are big elephants in the room here. So instead of asking you to shut down this company, much as I wish you would do so, I ask that you order SRB to relocate to a place where there is a reasonable buffer zone, so the Pembroke population and environment can be protected from being subjected to any more years of tritium emissions. Pembroke does not need a tritium emissions factory, nor does it need a storage facility for nuclear wastes. And its nearby landfill site should not be used for the dumping of nuclear waste either. Since we know the radioactive burden that already exists here is not going to disappear magically overnight, the only solution is to stop adding to it. I've heard it said it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. I beseech you, please do the right thing for the people of this community. 25 years is long enough.
Thank you.